car and driving down one of the streets in Culbertson. And Mother and one of her girlfriends was walking down the street, and they kind of eyed each other, and Daddy stopped and talked to these girls, and I think Daddy might have been with some other guys too. But that's how they met, and I must have exchanged, I don't know, phone numbers.
I think that, let's see, Mom and Dad met, my dad was working for my aunt and uncle, and they knew of Mom, and so they invited them together to meet each other. And then my dad was driving one of the Star cars, and he saw these two girls walking on the street, so he picked them up, asked them if they wanted to ride, and so Mom beat the other girl that she was with, Vesper Ross, and beat her so she could sit by Dad because she thought he was good looking. So those two things, I think, is how they met each other then.
My parents met, my father was in a car driving down the road, and he spotted these 2 or 3 good gals walking along the road. So he stopped and said, "Do you want to ride?" And my mother jumped in the front seat right beside him immediately. That's how they met.
We lived in a 2-bedroom house in Huntington Park, 3256 Grand Avenue in Huntington Park. Small, probably 1,100 square feet. 2 sisters and me, and my bedroom was in the living room, so very small.
The first home I lived in was 17 miles from the closest town, and we had an outhouse, but we did have electricity. Daddy had rigged up many batteries, and they were, I think, like 12 voltage or whatever. So we did have electricity. And my siblings, I had a brother, older sister, and then eventually a younger sister from that home.
I lived in Pandora, Ohio. I was born in Bluffton, Ohio, and I have a younger brother and 2 older sisters.
Okay, it was in the country. I had 1 sister and 3 brothers. 2 brothers. 2 brothers.
Okay, I have 2 sisters and 1 brother, and I would never trade for another family because we were brought up in a Christian home, and my parents were marvelous to us, and we had our scrabbles at times with siblings like every family does, but I loved my parents and my sisters and my brother, and we had a good time. We really did have a good time with cousins and being raised together.
Okay, I was born in Culbertson, Nebraska, on a farm. I had a brother and 2 sisters, and I was the youngest, and I was very spoiled, they say.
She was the roommate of a girlfriend that I had earlier, so at Westmont College. So in essence, that's the way we met. My ex-girlfriend was her roommate. So, and my sister introduced us together. She was also at Westmont College.
Gus and I met each other at Taylor University in Fort Wayne, Indiana. We were freshmen, and we didn't marry until we were out of school.
I went to college in Taylor University and met Mel in one of my classes. I forget what class it was, but we started seeing each other probably maybe after a month or so of college.
At a revival meeting.
I met him at a revival meeting.
His sister was my roommate at Westmont College, and she kept saying, "You need to meet my brother." And so one weekend, I was at Westmont, and one weekend he came to Westmont to see his sister and an old ex-girlfriend. And I thought, he looks pretty good. I wouldn't mind going out with him. And it took through that whole school year, it was the end of my freshman year, that he actually did ask me out.
I know I proposed to her at, I think, a Hawaiian restaurant in the Pasadena area. I just that's where I did it. Nothing real special, but just a nice night between she and I and this Hawaiian restaurant.
Gus Rutt. He was living in Michigan, and he traveled, 1,200 miles, I think, nonstop, and to Oklahoma City, where my parents were living then, and he asked me to marry him then.
I drove from Flint, Michigan to Oklahoma City, Oklahoma in one day. It was 700 miles. And I had with me a diamond ring. And so I think it was the day that I got there, I was exhausted. I gave her a diamond ring and asked her if she would marry me. And she gave an affirmative answer.
It happened on a way to church, I think, someplace, and it happened on the road. And Beulah accepted the ring, but she wouldn't show it to anyone. She was afraid to show it to anybody.
That was interesting. we were going, I don't know where we went, but Daryl gave me this ring. I accepted, but we were very young, and I thought, oh no, what will my mom and dad say? Because he hadn't asked or talked to them about anything like this. And so he gave me the ring, but I was ashamed to show it and wear it because I thought, what are they going to say? And it took me a little while before I showed it to them, and they probably about had a heart attack. Oh, it was funny.
He asked me out to go to dinner, and it was Christmas time, and gave me this gigantic box. And he said, "This is your gift." So I opened it, and I kept opening, and there was this little tiny box. And it was a diamond ring. And he said, "Will you marry me?" And I said, "Yes!"
What was your favorite job?
Bailey, probably, I really enjoyed being a football coach. And I was in high school. We had very good teams. A number of our players went on to play major college football. And we won the CIF a couple times. So it was a real, that probably was my favorite job as a football coach.
Where were you when you heard that President Kennedy was shot?
Yeah, that's interesting because I think everybody remembers that, don't they? I was teaching a high school biology class at Santa Monica High School. And we didn't have, I don't think we had TV at that time in the rooms, but the word was announced on the loudspeaker. And immediately it just, as you'd expect, it just hush came over everything. And it was really sort of I won't say scary, but sort of an awesome moment of time. Easy to remember that one.
What do you believe is the key to a successful marriage?
Yeah, a couple things. Most important thing is to have a very strong relationship with the Lord Jesus Christ. when you do that, and to believe in and pray together, that's the most important thing. And then second, the last little part is, I believe it's really important for men, well, and women, for us to do everything we possibly can do to make our wives feel good, feel happy, and feel contented.
Actually, this is about.
Wedding day was a very warm day in June. We went to the park with all the family for lunch. I think it was, we did a picnic lunch, and then we got married in Fort Wayne, Indiana, at the Presbyterian Church, at the Missionary Church, and then we went to the Wisconsin Dells for our wedding.
Our wedding day was in Fort Wayne, Indiana, and I believe it was a very hot day. And my dad was a minister, and he married us. And do you take this woman to be your wedded wife? And I said, I live. I was completely out of sync. And Dad asked me after the wedding was over, do you know what you said when I asked you, do you take this woman to be your wedded wife? I said, well, no, what? He said, I live. And instead of saying, I do.
Wedding day was on Saturday night, Friday night, some night, Friday or Saturday night, and we had, it was an evening affair, and family all came, and a few friends, and Jack took the tires off of our car so we couldn't leave, and it took us several hours to get those back and installed and leave, which was around midnight or after that day.
Wedding day, it was a wonderful day, and I remember we were to see he was the groom, I was the bride, and we weren't to see each other for that day, but we were down in McCook, in the big city, the biggest city we had that we would attend to, and I saw him walking across the street. I said, "Oh, Mom," I'm not supposed to see him, and so we didn't talk to him or anything, but that was kind of funny. But anyway, we had a good wedding, but it was a disaster afterwards because it was 3 o'clock in the morning before we could ever get back our car. They took the tires off of the car and hid them, and I finally, my mom let out the bag, let it out, and said that where the car was. She knew about it from someone had told her. And so then it was 3 or 4 in the morning before we could ever get the tires back on the car. So that was a funny thing, but.
Oh, wow. That was 52 years ago. Wedding day. It was, we went and got our hair done and had breakfast with my mother and 2 sisters, and then the wedding was awesome. And at that time, we only did receptions with cake and ice cream and nuts and mints, and it was amazing. My wedding was at 8 o'clock at night, so at 9 o'clock it was pretty much all over, and it was magical.
Probably, I really enjoyed being a football coach, and I was in high school. We had very good teams. A number of our players went on to play major college football, and we won the CIF a couple times. So it was a real. That probably was my favorite job.
Favorite job? I guess the present one. Working at our office.
I enjoyed a job I had in 4 years at college. I worked at Lincoln National Bank in Fort Wayne, Indiana, and my job was to take bad checks back to the various stores within walking distance of the bank. I enjoyed that.
I think working for probably for Laterno College, or perhaps for the Salvation Army, maybe Laterno College. I enjoyed that.
Favorite job? My first favorite job was working for a family. Well, it was a husband and wife. She had TB, and they needed a cook, a cleaner. They needed just a maid to help them along because she had TB and surgery. And so I was very upset going there, and I was so young, and I was to cook the meals, and the owner of this place, he would come in at 4 o'clock in my bedroom and turn on the light switch and said, "It's time to milk the cows." I had to milk cows. It was really hard. I struggled with that, and I told my mom and dad, I said, "I can't work here anymore." So then I did after that was growing up. And then after I was married, I didn't work. I stayed with our kids and stayed home with them. And I think when Kendall was in high school, I cleaned homes with my dad in Leisure World and helped him. And then I worked in JCPenney's for I don't know how many years, but it was quite a few years. And worked in the different departments, credit place and boys and girls departments. They would switch people around to different departments.
My favorite job, I've had 6 of them, and I think my favorite job was Lexington Place. I worked with my very best friend. She owned the shop, and I managed it.
That's interesting because I think everybody remembers that, don't they? I was teaching a high school biology class at Santa Monica High School, and we didn't have, I don't think we had TV at that time in the rooms, but the word was announced on the loudspeaker, and immediately it just, as you'd expect, it just hush came over everything, and it was really sort of I won't say scary, but sort of an awesome moment of time. Easy to remember that one.
I was teaching, but school, at La Salette School in 2nd grade, but I had playground duty. And so I was out on the playground, and one of the teachers, Mary Buck, came out and told me about that. And I was pregnant with Cheryl.
I was in our home in Hacienda Heights, and I turned the television on, and all of a sudden I was sitting in the family room where our television is, and I thought, oh my, I couldn't believe it. I was glued there to the television for hours.
I was in a home in Thousand Oaks, and I was visiting. I was a host to another minister and his wife, and I remember she broke down and wept when she heard that news, because it was a very, very sad thing to have happen.
I was home in Thousand Oaks, and I heard it on the radio, I think it was, and it was just very sad news to hear.
I was in Santa Monica City College in a restroom, and I had just gone in there after PE, and I heard that he was shot.
Yeah, a couple things. Most important thing is to have a very strong relationship with the Lord Jesus Christ. And when you do that, and to believe in and pray together, that's the most important thing. And then second, the last little part is, I believe it's really important for men, well, and women, for us to do everything we possibly can do to make our lives feel good, feel happy, and feel contented.
Having the same values, and I think being able to communicate and to forgive, and loving God, having that as the cornerstone of your marriage.
Well, I would say the idea of having values of each other's individual personality and being able to share with each other when we do have individual differences, that we can come to a consensus, and that probably has been most helpful.
Do you have any bad habits now or in the past?
Probably leaving my shoes in the family room or something like that.
A marriage is a give and take thing, and I believe that as long as people, even though they can disagree, but they need to do so in such a way that is relatively agreeable.
For a successful marriage, divorce was never an option, and we were taught that, and we made vows and wanted to keep them. And I believe the first thing you need to do is to have God in your life and serve God should be number one, and love your husband, and be obedient, and love each other. And sometimes it's really struggles, like every marriage has, it seems like. And we went to a counselor one time when we lived in, I think, Fountain Valley. We were having some problems, and because Daryl was never home, he was always gone, and I was seemed like I was raising the kids, by myself. And went to a counselor, and we went to 2 sessions, I believe, and he said, "You two go home, you have no problems." so we, but anyway, I think if you both really trust and be obedient to God, you'll have a successful marriage.
A lot of prayer and a lot of laughter.
We were thinking about that. I guess the worst thing, I used to smoke a pipe at the time. It was sort of fun, I enjoyed it, but that might have been perceived as a bad habit. Not really, I don't think.
Gus is back there saying smoking. I tried one cigarette once and nearly died. And bad habits, I imagine you have to ask my husband that.
Probably leaving my shoes in the family room or something like that.
Maybe I eat too much, I don't know. Maybe, I don't know.
Bad habits. I had a terrible bad habit when I was growing up. I would lick my lips, and I would have all around just sore lips. My mother would put alcohol on it, and I would just stand there and scream. It hurt so bad. But anyway, that was a terrible habit I had, and I think it was like in grade school or junior high, that type of.
I'm sure I have, but I can't think of any right now.
We were in Europe with our friends, and in, I think, Italy, when they drive on the wrong side of the road, and we were crossing a street, and I just stepped onto the street, assuming cars were coming from the other direction, but I was wrong. They were coming because it was backwards, and a guy almost hit me, and I jumped back, or maybe one of the guys, Dan, I think, pulled me back. Man, I never even saw the car coming, Yeah, but that was a very scary moment. Yeah, you remember that.
I was pretty young, although I probably was in junior high, and Lou was 7 years younger. We're sitting in the back seat of the car, going home from a town where we had just purchased all of our school supplies. We were looking at them, and all at once we felt the car go down into the ditch. Boo was driving, and Mother was in the front seat, and we knew we'd been hit by somebody, and we went way down into a ditch, and we were not wearing seatbelts, of course, then, and we got out of the car, found another car was also down in the ditch, and then another car was off to the left, and there we saw a body on the highway, and the man was drunk, and he hit both of our cars, and he actually died a day later. He was running away from the police, but that was a scary time for me.
We were in Hawaii, and I was swimming, and I got shocked that I went under the water and took a gulp of water, and I just realized I had about 20 feet to get to the shore, and I finally made it, and I thought, oh man, that scared me. It's not that I couldn't swim, but I guess I had been out there in the water deeper, and my arms were tired. Yeah.
Someone shot a gun. We never found out who, and the bullet came through my side window of the pickup right after we were married, and hit the windshield and cracked the windshield. Missed my head and missed whatever. We never found out who did it. So I've had some scary things.
I know I was cleaning some homes, and I was to clean this family room, and I could not go in that room to clean because there was 2 Siamese cats up on the mantle. They were the awfulest looking cats, and wouldn't let me in that room. I mean, they just, hissed at me. They just were awful, and I couldn't go in there, and I thought they were going to attack me. And I tried to go in there, but I just closed the door finally. And I told the lady there was no way I could go and clean her house to do that. And so that was kind of one of the scary things. And the other thing that scared me so much was I had to close up the chicken coop at night when I was young. And every night we'd take turns as kids, I guess, but we had a big spotlight, yard light, and that would be on, and they would, my siblings would turn off the light on me, scare me to death. I just screamed and ran down and had to close that chicken coop up. I think those were the scariest times for me.
I was 6 years old, and my family and I were in another city at a church conference, and I had to go to the restroom. And when I came back, I was only 6 years old, and when I came back, I couldn't find my parents. I didn't know where they were, I didn't know where the church was, and it took a while for me to find them. And another time, I lost Kristen, and she was only 3 at a mall. And that was really scary, because I was going in every store trying to figure out where she was. But I found her.
"5 years old. My father was a pastor, and so I was raised in the Christian home, raised as a pastor's son, and would never do that life differently. We hope and pray. We pray this for our grandkids, for our kids, that they basically develop and grow in their walk and their relationship with Jesus Christ. Nothing beats that in this crazy day and age. So that's the most important thing. Legacy, I think we can leave for them.
I'm not even sure exactly when I became a Christian, because we had revival meetings every year. And I think I went forward every time because I think in that church, somehow I got the feeling you could lose your salvation, you know, if you did anything wrong in between. And so I think I don't have an exact date, but it was when we went to college and a speaker spoke and said, you know, if you've asked Christ into your life, then you are in his, I mean, he's in your heart. And of course we do things wrong at times, so we have to confess. But I think that determined to me, okay, I don't have to worry about losing my salvation every time I do something wrong, that his forgiveness covered past, future sins.
I became a Christian probably when I was about 6 years old, and there was a person that came to have what were called revival meetings every night for maybe a week in our church, my dad's church, and I accepted Christ in a children's meeting held by the speaker's wife, and that was, I still remember the picture in my mind when that took place.
I became a Christian when I was 9 years old at a Sunday night service at our church. Pastor J.C. Journey was our pastor, and they sang the well-known song, Just As I Am was the song, and I would like to know that that decision did not make me perfect, but at least set me on a path towards being something that was different than otherwise. I am guilty of more than one minor mistake along the pathway, but God has been forgiving, and I want people to know that that's a very important relationship to me.
I was 9 years old, and we had in the Mennonite church in Culbertson, Nebraska, and it was during our Bible school days, and they gave us the invitation to walk down the aisle and to accept Christ if we wanted to, and that's when I did. I walked down that aisle, and I remember yet to this day, my heart just seemed like it was pounding and jumping out, and it was just God speaking to my heart, even at that age. And they had scripture and talked to us and showed us really the way how God loved us and how we have to accept Him for the salvation. And so that was when I accepted Him. And can I just read something here?
Okay.
One of the ones I read is the land between. And he says, in their life is full of unwanted transitions. It is our response of the love between that will determine whether our journey through the desert will result in deep, lasting growth or prove destructive to the soul. I thought that was, but I enjoyed those books.
I was really young. I was 6, and so I had God in my life, or I've been aware of Him in my life ever since I was 6. And I can't even imagine doing life without God. He's been very important to me, and just prayer has been important in our life. I think what I want my family to know is how important prayer is, how it bonds a family. I think there's a saying, a family that prays together stays together. Bob and I pray all the time together. It just puts us on the same page. So I think if families or couples, if they can start praying together, it just puts you on the same page, and you just go through life a lot easier.
The last one I read, I loved, Agents of the Apocalypse by, what's his name? Jeremiah, David Jeremiah. That's just a recent one. There's not one that stands out over any other. I like to read about end times things. That's probably as good as I can get.
would say the Bible, because that's where we have the whole basis of our living and our hope of being in heaven someday is based on the Bible.
Well, I read more specifically in the Bible nearly every day. Like, well, Monday through Friday. I have a devotional book that it's all based on the Bible, and I do that Monday through Friday.
And believe it or not, it's the Bible. I read it through once, and this year I'll be really close to reading it through twice, so I'm not sure I'll make it, but that's my favorite book. I spend more time than any other reading that.
The Bible. And probably fiction though would be the Harry Krause series. He's my favorite fiction author. I just love all that he writes.
Chocolate.
Snickers bar.
Hershey's chocolate.
Snicker.
Snickers or peanut clusters.
I love it all.
You know, I'm going to go, I think, with everybody else. A lot of people just feel that Christmas is primarily for what it stands for. I mean, the whole world goes on a little bit of there's a little relief around the world around Christmas time because of Christ's birth and what that means. So that'd be my favorite holiday.
Christmas.
Christmas, without doubt.
I don't know, probably Thanksgiving. Probably is.
My favorite holiday right now is Thanksgiving, but when I was younger it was always Christmas. And so that would be it, I guess, Thanksgiving now, because we don't have small children or anything at home for Christmas, so.
Christmas. I almost said Thanksgiving, but it's really Christmas.